How are we doing today? It's a big crowd. It's a good crowd. So I'm going to talk about today the crisis of energy. And I'm not talking about electricity. We're talking about people seeking more energy on a daily basis, and unfortunately, seeking that energy in all the wrong places. I remember the very first time I saw an energy drink. It was in 2000. I was just stationed in Hawaii at an NSA facility for signals intelligence as a Marine, and we used to work these crazy hours. We'd work shift work, so we'd work 4 days from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m., and then get 1 day off. Then we'd get 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., then we get 3 days off, and then we'd go right back to the 1 p.m. And so you can imagine the circadian rhythm totally shot, and 3 o'clock in the morning after you've just switched your sleeping habit from the 1 day off you had. I remember going up to the store and guys were like, oh, there's this new thing called Red Bull, which I didn't get because it looked weird. But guys were pounding it just to try to keep awake. And so the question is, hang on here, is this clicker not working? There we go. They say it's estimated around 30% of young adults drink energy drinks. Like, that's what they say. I think it's way higher than that, like way higher. And 73% of American adults drink coffee daily. Probably not just 1 cup. A lot of people, and there's nothing wrong, and I just want to make this very clear. This is not a talk about caffeine bad, because actually caffeine utilized properly, there's actually a lot of there's a lot of health benefits if used the right way. Unfortunately, we overconsume, and whenever you overconsume anything, you can have negative impacts. And so, like caffeine, if you overconsume it, you can cause insomnia and nervousness, restlessness, increased heart rate. There's all sorts of different things that you can affect by overconsuming caffeine. So if not caffeine, then how do we get energy? How do we get real energy, right? Because caffeine does not give us energy. Caffeine, all it does really is block receptors that make us tired, right? The different processes that help to mediate and regulate sleep, it blocks that process. So it doesn't actually give us energy, it just blocks it. That's why when caffeine wears off, we have that crash, right? So how do we build real, true cellular energy? And that's through this right here, the mitochondria. I know a lot of people have heard of the mitochondria, and you've heard the term powerhouse of the cell, but what does that mean? So whenever I talk to patients about mitochondria and ATP and all that kind of stuff, I'll be honest, that sounds really boring to a patient, and it's usually going over their head. It's just like, you got to explain it in a way that makes sense. So for me, I use the fire, and for those that have heard me talk about it, you've heard this before, I use the fire pit analogy. We have the rocks that make up the cell wall, okay? The logs are mitochondria. The fire, or the energy that the logs give off, is ATP. So the more logs we put on the fire, the more ATP we create. Why is that important, and how do we do that? Well, I'm going to show you here in a minute with this amazing product that was redone back in April. But first, I want to talk about really how big of a deal that is. So if we look from just the brain itself, there's estimated to be around 80 million neurons. And in those, each neuron, there's estimated 2 million mitochondria per neuron. So that's a lot of mitochondria that we need, and that's just for brain function. But what we need ATP for is for everything. I'm doing this, I'm using ATP, right? You're thinking, you're moving, most of all your physiological process, you need ATP in order to create energy, right? In order to have energy. And so this right here is what I was super excited about. When they redid this product, Mito2Max, we put in a new ingredient. And whenever I talk about a product, I like to pick out 1 or 2 things that I call a product pearl, because that's something you can take away, it's easy to understand, and it's easy to teach other people. Because if you leave this talk today and you don't understand, then I haven't done my job. The goal is that you can understand this and you can repeat it, and not repeat it after you study it again. I mean, go in the hall and repeat it, right? PQQ was added. Now, actually, I'm going to go right here. Comparing the old to the new, right? The new formula has the MetaPWR essential oil, which we're not going to talk necessarily as much about that, but there's all sorts of amazing things with essential oil and absorption. But we're going to talk about the PQQ. PQQ is one of the few, if not only, botanical that has been clinically proven to increase mitochondrial production, which in turn, when we create more mitochondria, we create more ATP. This right here, amazing product. But it's not the only product that we need when dealing with energy. MetaPWR Recharge, in any process, even in the process of creating ATP, we need magnesium and calcium. There's different electrolytes that we need in that process as a cofactor in order to even create ATP, right? So these two products together, and I'll talk more here as we go, are an amazing synergistic team for energy. With this here in Recharge, we have the 75 deep sea minerals, we have the liposomes, fresh ginseng, and the key electrolytes. I'm going to highlight a couple of these, and specifically the liposomes and the fresh ginsengs. But we first need to start talking about what are electrolytes, why are they important? I think we've all heard about calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium. All of these things play a major role in many different chemical reactions, to include fluid balance, to include moving nutrients and water where it's needed in the body, facilitating the production of ATP, just like we talked about, but also muscle contraction, emptying of bowels. There's a lot of different things that these electrolytes are extremely important for. So, liposomal technology. I know we've heard about it a little bit, but what does that really mean? So a liposome is like a little fat bubble. And what it does is it encapsulates a vitamin or a mineral and helps it to get through the stomach. So that way it can actually get to the cell. Because we have two different types of vitamins and minerals. You have water soluble and you have fat soluble. And when you have a water soluble, oftentimes what you'll experience, it degrades in the stomach, and that stomach acid. And so that's why when you see some of these other competing products, they have extreme amounts of certain vitamins or minerals because they know a lot of that's going to be wiped out in the stomach. When you have liposomal technology, you can actually have less ingredient and have more absorption. So you don't have to put as much ingredient in, and you can actually get those ingredients to the cell where it's needed. So this right here, and you're going to hear me talk about this tomorrow as well, liposomal technology with VMG. I can talk about liposomal technology all day. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good of a product you have. If you can't get that product to the cell, you know what I mean? If you're not absorbing it, great, you have an awesome product, but it's in the toilet. So we want to have a product that not only is awesome, but is absorbed and utilized. Fresh ginseng, this is really cool. The fresh ginseng actually helps with mitochondrial production as well, with ATP production. So in order to get sodium and potassium in and out of the cell, and I'm going to explain this because we've got the little sodium-potassium pump we're showing right now, right? The inside of the cell, you have a sodium-potassium pump on the cell wall. And on the inside, you'll have sodium come in and attach. But that pump cannot open to the outside of the cell and release it until there's an ATP that comes up and it releases a phosphate, which then allows for that pump to open, releasing the sodium. And it doesn't show it here, but it actually then takes in the potassium. The ATP, the phosphate releases, and then it opens back up in the cell. So in order to actually shuttle in and out sodium and potassium in and out of the cell where we need it to be, we have to have ATP, once again. I'm going to actually go right here. Here we go. Here's an example of our recharge versus competitors. So obviously most of these have sodium, potassium, magnesium. That's pretty common. Sugar-free, it's getting more common because companies are becoming more aware. Liposomal technology? Nope. The baobab extract? Nope. Fresh ginseng? Nope. And of course, we're powered by essential oils, right? So they clearly don't have that. And even if they did, they wouldn't have the good ones because we have them. So there's two things here. I'm going to read actually a testimonial. I got this email. gosh, I think it was about 2.5, 3 weeks ago from a wellness advocate. And it was serendipitous because I was putting together this presentation and this email came across. I have not spoken to this wellness advocate in months, but they just randomly sent this out. And here's what she said. Hi, Dr. Watts. A few months ago, you did an amazing call with our doTERRA team, Lori Hayes, and you talked a lot about adrenal and thyroid support. You talked about the new Mito2Max and how amazing it was. I was super hesitant and even asked you about it. The old formula was an awful experience for me. I would crash hard on it, felt off. It didn't get any of the response I was told I would. You urged me to try the new formula and let you know how it went. It took me months to talk myself into trying it again. I already felt exhausted and absent, and I didn't dare make it worse. But then I decided I had to try. I've been taking it consistently for 9 days now, and something I realize is how much greater my level of focus is. The only thing I can conclude is that this is what is helping me because it's the only thing that's changed. I've been able to work on things that I haven't been able to even touch. Reading books was a struggle because I couldn't remember what I had read from one sentence to the next. It has been really rough and definitely hard as I try to homeschool my kids. I would get so frustrated that I couldn't remember or focus on anything. I couldn't even finish sentences. The last 3 days, I have read 6 chapters of a book, and I actually remembered what I read. Right? Wrote my syllabus and organized everything for the high school literature class I'm teaching this year at our co-op. Planned 2 weeks of meals and shopped for them. I have been able to be present for conversations and recall details. I wish I could put into words how happy this makes me. I thought the level of function that I was at was just part of being a burnout mom of 4 and running our family business. I feel like a human being again. I cannot wait to see how it helps even in the long term. Thank you for encouraging me to try it again and trust. Callie Wardle. What a powerful, can you imagine, I'm sure there's plenty of people here, can you imagine, that's what a lot of people, just in their daily lives, they think this is normal. It's normal to not be able to focus. It's normal to read something and not recall what you just read 5 seconds ago. It's kind of like as a chiropractor with pain. People get to the point where they think pain's normal. I just pop an ibuprofen, it's pain. Everybody has pain. No, it's not. It's an alarm system telling your body that something's not right and needs to be fixed. No different than energy. If you're fatigued and you're experiencing things like she's experiencing, that's not normal. That means there's definitely things you can do to fix that. And the big one is not just the Mito2Max, but what I like to call it, this is my energy stack. Mito2Max and recharge combined. Pre-workout, athletic performance. These are, and moms at home, or just anybody who needs energy, right? These are 3 of my kids right now. My daughter in the middle. We got to see her first game last night at UVU, her first college game. My son, rugby player, over in Ireland playing rugby, and my younger daughter, rugby player. So important. If you have athletes at home, they should be taking this before their games. If they're playing if they're like in soccer or football or hockey or rugby, a very extensive sport, I have them take this stack before the game and at halftime. And I'll share one more little story. This was a few years back. My son was in nationals in Kansas City playing rugby, and I would bring stuff for them to take before and after. And my son would tell the other kids on the team, hey, just take this stuff. Like, what is it? Just take it. You'll feel different. And at the end of the game, these kids are like, oh my gosh, what was that? I'm it's halftime. I'm feeling good. And the next day, the second day of nationals, I was about 30 minutes late. Not late for the game, but I usually show up early. And I was 30 minutes late, probably about 10 minutes for the game starting. And as I'm walking on, I see these kids walking, and my son's walking over to me. He's like, He's like, Dad, everybody needs this stuff. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, everybody's been asking me, hey, is your dad going to bring those drugs? And I'm like, wait a second. These are not drugs. These are not drugs. These are electrolytes. I promise. But it was amazing that even these young high school kids could feel the difference and feel how much of a difference they felt by taking it before a game and at halftime. And their performance was better. And honestly, I mean, you sweat out so much when you're playing these games. It's healthier for them as well. A lot of people have asked me when I sit down on one-on-one and they say, Doc, what is your favorite products? Or what are your favorite products? And it's like, okay, it's kind of hard to like, okay, which one? PB Restore. I always say PB Restore. It's my go-to, right? Because like the gut controls more than anything else, any other system. But outside of like what we all experience today, the VMG, Omega, PB Restore, Foundational Wellness Kit, amazing. That right there for everyone should be on that. Outside of that, when people ask, what's your favorite add-on? For me, it's the Mito2Max. Love the Mito2Max. Like I said, it's not just for energy. Yes, it helps increase ATP. It's not just for energy. It's for every process in the body, pretty much. Like you need ATP to do anything. To think, to sit, to move your muscles, we need ATP. So even if you don't think that you know, oh, I'm not tired. Okay. This is still an amazing product. And if you haven't tried it, I definitely encourage you to go try it because your normal right now may not be normal. And after trying this, you may feel a new normal like she felt, which is life-changing. And there's no greater experience than to encourage somebody to try something, especially as a doctor when you're helping patients and you're like, do this, and they call you back. And to the average person, it might seem silly. Like, why is that such a big deal? You know, like as a thyroid doctor, I would have patients. I had this one patient that called me in tears. She had a piece of pizza, and that sounds ridiculous. But even looking at a piece of pizza would have thrown her into a massive thyroid storm. And it's these little things, but that was their normal. She has to avoid all these foods. Now she doesn't have to avoid foods, right? And so it's no different than with this here. We think that's normal. We think that being depleted of energy is normal. It's not. It's just deficiency. And in my personal opinion, deficiency is one of the biggest causes of most problems, whether it's vitamin, mineral, mitochondrial, whatever it might be. So I truly encourage you to go try it. If you have more questions about it and you want to deep dive, I try not to deep dive on stage because I want you guys to really take away something that you could go out in the hallway and talk to somebody new about this and know how to explain it. Know how to explain mitochondria. Use the fire pit. It's simple. Because when people told me, oh, mitochondria, look, I remember listening to somebody, explain it to somebody, mitochondria, and they're going all science, and I'm just staring at the person listening, just nodding their head, and I'm like, I don't understand anything he's saying right now, right? And so that doesn't do any good. And so even when you're going to teach, and you're going to sell these products, you have to be able to teach it in a simple way to where not only they're going to understand, but they can go home and explain it to their spouse 30 minutes later, right? If we truly want to have an impact on people's health, we have to not only take the right products, but we have to be able to explain how to take them so that we can help impact other people's lives. I thank you for your time.